Welcome to another episode of Argo Unpacked. Today we're going to be talking about, do you even need Kubernetes? Is it just far too complicated?
Dan, I think your mic is gone. I cannot hear you.
Yeah, I did in the beginning, and then it dropped.
No worries, Dan. While you figure it out, I'll just introduce myself and Bart. I think we will start with that. So thank you for having me. I'm Dan. I'm one of the instructors who learn Kubernetes. So I primarily teach Kubernetes. So is Kubernetes something really complicated that you should learn? Is probably a question that I like to tackle for sure. Yeah, that's it about me, Bart.
My name is Bart, and I have the pleasure of looking after the content side at LearnCube. And I have a weekly podcast called Cube FM, where I interview different Kubernetes practitioners about the different challenges that they're facing and how they're solving them. And this topic about do we even really need Kubernetes has come up on more than a few episodes. So excited to dive into more today with the two of you. And if anybody in the audience has questions as well, always open to hear them.
Excellent. I can see Dan face talking about, but nothing really is coming through, not yet. I think that's the excitement of
I'll use
live.
my cruddy MacBook microphone. I have this really nice microphone in front of me, and it was working 1 second ago. Sorry about that. I did a whole energetic intro that was like, "Hey, welcome to Argo Unpacked."
It was very
yeah, visually speaking, there was a great impact. So I'm very
great. Yeah. Well, to introduce the topic, and I apologize, and I'll fiddle with my audio a little bit more maybe while you guys are talking. But to introduce the topic once again, do you even need Kubernetes? Is it overkill? Is it too complicated? There are a lot of people online telling us that Kubernetes had killed their business, that they would have been successful if they hadn't adopted Kubernetes, or that now they're more successful without Kubernetes. And so this has become a little bit of a meme online. We're going to jump all into that on today's episode of Argo Unpacked. Thank you, Bart and Danielle. You guys are well-versed. You guys are the hosts of Kube FM, right, is the show. And so there couldn't be a better group to have audio malfunctions with. If I drop out, you guys could just take and run your show as normal. So, but yeah, what kind of triggered this whole conversation was I saw lots of comments and discussions going around on X where people were basically saying, hey, Kubernetes is overkill. And for our business, all we really need is a static web app that runs out of an S3 bucket. Why are you even doing microservices, you Philistines? And there's this constant refrain of like, oh, Kubernetes is so complicated. And there's something about that I thought was interesting, because I've been using Kubernetes for 10 years now. And I feel like, yeah, there are gotchas, there are things you got to know. But to me, Kubernetes feels simpler than the old world. Like I used to have to go and spend a lot of time configuring VMs and like changing firewall rules and running a bunch of scripts and doing all this kind of stuff. So to me, Kubernetes feels easier than the old world. But yeah, what do you guys think? Have you heard this before, this criticism of like Kubernetes is overkill, you don't need it, you shouldn't be using it?
Yeah, I think there are plenty of examples of, I would say, engineers complaining or just sort of venting their opinions about Kubernetes. But I think, something you said sort of resonated with me as well. So I've got the same experience of being Kubernetes 9 years now. If I look at this and say, wow, yes, it is complex, but compared to what you used to have before, I think it is a lot better. But at the same time, I sort of, need to put this into context. For us, it's been 9 years, or 10 years for you, Dan. So we absorbed a lot of the things that for us are basically just, we give them for granted. Whereas I can see someone coming in now and seeing all of the scene that we're seeing in 10 years all at once, right? And then I think that sort of emotion can be quite overwhelming. And, you might come back and say, hey, is there anything simpler that I could use instead? And I think, I totally get it. But I think for me, most of the time, you're talking about, necessary complexity is not something we can go and just find something simpler. Of course, if you're hosting on S3, probably you can just keep doing that. But if you need something which is a little bit more complex, then yes, we will be. Kubernetes is probably a good starting point. I think we've seen, Bart, I think we have seen that in the people that we talk to as well, right? Most of the people are just like, they sort of have this emotion if they're starting, but if they have been running it for a while, they tend to be sort of giving it for granted. At least this is what this is my experience. What did you see?
Yeah, that it is the assumed starting point. And, it's interesting. We have KubeCon coming up. And so I don't know, tracking the numbers on KubeCon, the amount of people that are first-time attendees shows that there are a lot of people that are making their way on there, but also a lot of people that are treated as a de facto standard and have done so for quite some time. And on the subject of complexity, yes, that's true. And when we've interviewed people, we've asked a question to a lot of different folks in the community about the biggest pain points on Kubernetes. And one of the biggest ones that gets mentioned time and time again, alongside network policy management, is just overall complexity and the learning curve. And so I think that Kubernetes will be as complex as the size of the resources that you have to get answers. And that could be in terms of, do you have your go-to blogs? Do you have your tutorials? Do you have your content creators? Do you go to conferences? Are you a member of a local CNCF group? Things like that. I think based on the strategy that you'll have in place there, you'll either have more headaches or less because you'll have resources to go to get those questions answered.
Yeah, that's like just a simple preparation to it. I do think that you brought up something there that people kind of come into Kubernetes new and it feels different. I think some of that is that some of the things that people maybe weren't used to dealing with in the past, maybe those are things were handled by an infrastructure person or a DevOps person, but now they're exposed with Kubernetes. And so they're like, oh, this is more complex. But what's really happened, I think, is that it's actually less complex. And as a result, the expectation becomes that a developer would own all of this. Yeah. And so for the developer, it feels more complex because there's more concepts than they used to have to care about. But that's a choice, an engineering organization choice. You don't have to have your developers getting heavy into Kubernetes. You can just say, hey, you just ship a binary, I'll pack it up into a container, I'll ship it into the service, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to worry about it. You can treat it exactly like the old world VMs that you're used to. But this is like some doomsaying around Kubernetes, that like DHH posted Kubernetes was such a waste of money. All we needed to do is throw our entire application on a server under my desk, and every once in a while I kick it and it restarts itself, and that's fine. It's resilient enough for what we're doing. And I guess, do you think that there's a certain scale where that's true, or is that like a category error on his part?
That's it's $1 million question, I guess. So I tend to agree with you. I think, but at the same time, look, if you look at my past, I've been doing development infrastructure for quite a while. So I remember, SSHing into VMs, doing the patching, upgrading, and I compare this with Kubernetes. I say, wow, okay, well, the set of trade-offs here. I'm much in favor with the newer way of doing things. I can sort of declare what I want. There are a set of problems that are taken away from me. Yes, it is more complex, but the complexity is actually, at least for me, it's worth it. It's worth it to the point that I actually run, if I need to run something which is like a simple application, then I will spin up a K3s cluster, so a very, a single node cluster, and just deploy it there. I think also Kubernetes, we talk about complexity, but I think there was, when we interviewed people at the KubeFM podcast, there was someone saying, hey, it's basically choose your own adventure, right? You can go very, 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 very complex, or you can use a subset of Kubernetes, which is simple enough to keep in your head. And I think this is a sort of a good message that, we should be sending out more, is that, yes, Kubernetes is vast because it's basically different things for different people, different company, different firms. But if you only need to deploy something simple, why don't you just focus on the core primitives? Why don't you focus on small, simple binaries that you can control and keep in your head? So suddenly, the things that you need to learn are not that much anymore. And it's something that you can do probably, maybe not an afternoon, but, a couple of days you can study, understand, and then deploy. So
yeah, maybe you're not getting all of the advantages of Kubernetes
Correct.
by just
But you're
throwing a
getting
binary
some of
into a pod, but you get some of it, yeah, and you can start building up from there. So there doesn't have to be that high barrier to entry, like you're saying.
Yeah.
So like have you switched? You said you when you're building a simple app, your go-to is K3s on your local machine to start working with it.
So I'll be now we get a little bit more into where I'm against the current. So I tend to prefer. So in Kubernetes, we think that most of the time you need like a control plane and several nodes to deploy workloads. That's like the standard. But of course, that introducing complexity in things like I deploy an application. If that node goes down, then what is my story for resilience, disaster recovery, and so on and so forth. It's sort of also introducing other problems. What kind of instances do I need? What is my strategy for things like PD? Sort of scaling. Most of the time, what I'm interested in just deploying stuff. So, and if I'm not deploying at scale, and I'm just like a medium-sized small company, then just a single node would do. So I'd rather go with a single really beefy node than a cluster which has got several smaller nodes. There are certain trade-offs, of course. You cannot have the same availability, but you trade one set of constraints for another. And for smaller companies, that trade-off might be actually okay. And for me, it is, right? I basically don't have this problem of upgrades, or I have it more pronounced because sometimes I need to go down. But going down for a few minutes for a very small company is not a big deal.
So if your choice was a single VM or a single server or Kubernetes, you can just run a single node Kubernetes.
Correct.
So
and then you get
same
all
hardware requirements, yeah.
And you get all the benefit of declarative deployments. You get all the benefit of you got a CLI which you can interact with the cluster. So you get a lot of the benefit of Kubernetes, but you don't get the benefit of scaling, for example, which might be a good compromise depending on your objectives.
But I think something else that developers might chafe against is the declarative part of Kubernetes, because from an operations standpoint, declarative is life-changing, amazing, stupendous. But from a development loop standpoint, if your development loop is I edit my file, I save the file, I run a Docker build, I push that image to a registry, I update the image in the manifest of the Kubernetes manifest, I commit the manifest, now it deploys to Kubernetes. If that's your workflow for testing your changes, that would freaking suck. That would be terrible. And I'm sure that there aren't tons of people that do that, because I mean, the localized tool chain for developing against containers is pretty good. And there are lots of tools that will automatically push your changes into a container on a Kubernetes cluster. But that does mean that you have to learn a new way to work. That's not just save file and, hey, I'm already running Apache locally or whatever, or Nginx locally, so I can go and see what my app looks like.
But it sounds like Dan, everyone now is installing Cloud and Cloud Code and just running it. We just skip the containers and everything else.
Yeah, no, I saw somebody was talking about how Claude was shipping their own CI, and they were like, oh yeah, in the future, you should actually just have Claude produce the binary. And I thought, what? Like, you're gonna use an LLM to make the binary? Like, what happened to reproducibility, bro? Like, wasn't that important to have reproducibility? That's a crazy statement to say, that I'm just gonna like handcraft a new binary every time I want to make a change, and it's gonna go through the LLM based on its whims.
Yeah, I follow closely. I think it's very interesting, right? And some people just run it inside a VPS that they run the application. There is no more CI, there is no more Git, there is no more anything. It just goes and edits and it's live. back here, I don't know. You probably remember the back the days of PHP when we used to just, FTP the changes or edit directly on the VPS itself. I think those days are back, at least for some of us. And now you see, us using Kubernetes and containers, having proper CI/CD pipelines and way to release this software. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have like these, not very new, because we used to do it in the past, but sort of new way of thinking how to actually write software. And I do think there is something in there. I don't totally agree on just stitching 20 years worth of engineering that we learn on deployments, on workloads, but I do understand these people ship a lot quicker than we are. Even if we optimize CI/CD to the extreme, we will never be able to beat them. So interesting to see this unfolding, I guess.
Can you hear me now on this microphone?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Loud
Okay,
and
and I'll try. If just start waving your arms if it goes out again. Yeah, well, so it's like a muscle that people just have to develop, because editing, I mean, look, running Cloud Code on just a like a VPS or whatever, I have no problem with that from a development standpoint. And if you're in the mode where like, hey, we're making a bunch of changes all the time, we don't care, because it's just sandbox stuff anyway. Like, if it's not worth committing to Git, then okay, yeah. If it's not worth committing to Git, it's probably not worth shipping on Kubernetes at this point. But I mean, even just letting Claude run, like it does every once in a while, for the lack of a better word, crap the bed, right? I mean, it'll delete, it'll like format the hard drive, because it's like, oh, I think there's something wrong with the hard drive. I'm just gonna format it. It's like, oh, it's nuked. Bye. So if you're not checking those things into Git periodically, but maybe this is actually a good case for us to even just get back to fundamentals with developers, because you do sometimes run into organizations where they'll discover. I heard a story years ago from let's say it's a Fortune 100 company, well-known, auditability, security standard. Everybody, I'm sure, is aware of this company. But they had a team that got laid off, and the service went down that team was responsible for. And so they're like, oh, crud, like we need to get somebody in there to go figure out how to get this thing back up and running. And so somebody jumped in and tried to figure it out. And they found that team hadn't committed any changes to Git in the last year. And they had been making changes and pushing them directly against their services, their VMs or whatever. And so the person who had to fix the service had to like go and like download everything off of the server to figure out what was even going on to go and fix the bug. But that's like, there's this kind of thing. I think it's maybe it's a symptom of imposter syndrome, where we all think that everybody else knows better than us. But it's like something where we don't realize that it's like the reverse is true, that like not everybody's following best practices all the time. Not everybody knows the best practices. Sometimes teams get lazy. Sometimes they get into these modes where it's like they're not committing to Git. Hey, if you're not committing to Git, maybe we should do an episode that's like, do you even need Git? You should just be vibe coding on prod all the time. That's the way to go. Just throw a bunch of agents at it. But like, if we can't convince you to use Git, then convincing you to use Kubernetes is probably a lost cause at that point.
With that in mind, though, what would you say, like when thinking about this notion, like, do you really need Kubernetes? And with all these technical challenges, there's always the very human part of this as well. What kind of culture do you think is necessary in any organization if they're going to be using it, from a knowledge sharing perspective, from making sure that there are best practices in place? What's your recommendation when you're talking to companies about that, Dan?
Oh, well, for sure. Like, if a company doesn't put value on things like auditability, then okay, Kubernetes is like one of the best, like GitOps and Argo CD, like these principles are designed around operations best practices. And if you don't care about those things, then it's going to be hard for you to jump in and use this. I think when I talk with, because we talk with a lot of people that are newer to Kubernetes for sure. I mean, we have a lot of customers that have been using Kubernetes for 10 years, but we talk to a lot of people who are coming in and they're adopting Argo, they're adopting GitOps, they're just adopting Kubernetes. Both, we see both cases. Maybe they're not even using Argo CD. Maybe they don't care about GitOps at this point. And the first thing that they typically do is they take their existing kind of monolith and they basically shove it into a container and throw it on Kubernetes. And that's kind of the approach that you were talking about, Danielle, a little bit, or Daniela, sorry, where that's probably fine to start off with, but you're leaving a lot of the value of Kubernetes on the table. So I think to your question, Bart, what I try to do with people is say like, look, you're not going to get all the advantages on day one of all this stuff, but you're okay, right? You just need to get enough of an advantage that you feel like this is a worthwhile effort and you can build on that experience. And I would say like the full Kubernetes paradigm of like being fully resilient and eventually consistent maybe applies to 10% of Kubernetes users. I think 90% do not have eventual consistency as like a core value of something that they want to build towards. And so if you're in that like culturally where like that's important to you to be able to like, oh, like we want to be able to do chaos engineering and we want to be flexible and we want to be able to deploy super frequently and we want to really optimize how quickly we're deploying because we want to be able to ship really fast. Well, then it's going to be worth the investment. But if you're like, hey, look, we ship like once a quarter. We don't really care about shipping more frequently than that. Our customers don't care or we don't care or whatever. Yeah, okay. Well, maybe some of these things, like we're talking about processes that are designed to help a Formula One team, do the 24 hours at Le Mans. And if you're just running to the grocery store, yeah, maybe you don't have to do all the same stuff. You don't have to, maybe sometimes those things can be a little bit overkill. So I don't think that people always have to use Kubernetes, but I would make the case separately that us as practitioners, for sure, I run my whole home lab on multi-node Kubernetes. And I don't do that because it's easier. I do that because it helps me keep sharp and it helps me apply these principles and it helps me look for opportunities to make it easier or feel easier. But most stuff isn't like designed for the home lab environment. So like I'm having to like, take a Docker composition and write Kubernetes YAML for it and make a Helm chart for it and, modify it. So yeah, I don't know. That was a whole long ramble, Bart.
It's good. It's helpful. What I really like what you mentioned there, though, is the value props. So like, if we're if you're working with an organization saying that this is a good idea, and what might be their sort of urgency or immediacy of expecting lots of results really quickly, and say, well, maybe it doesn't really work that way. There are some things that you can expect short term, but other things will come further down the road, so that maybe some of those headaches or the operational challenges of getting going will certainly be put in perspective. But once again, having that those early rewards, those quick wins that can be achieved, so that would be helpful. Another thing that's come up a lot in the podcast as well, I guess some ways related to this, is like, we live in an age where people want things to run right out of the box, plug and play. And we ask people about, what they expect the next 10 years of Kubernetes to be, since we just celebrated, the last, 10 years of Kubernetes a couple of years ago. And they frequently mention about how they want it to be a boring technology, or as Kelsey Hightower refers to, platform for building platforms. What are the things that, if either of you or both of you, if you could see a couple of things getting boring, what are the things that you would like to be more boring about Kubernetes?
Oh man, you go first.
Goes first.
No. I think just the operations resiliency stuff should feel boring. I'm fine with that, but I'm actually quite excited by Kubernetes all the time. I just talked to somebody today who was explaining how they're doing their mainframes with Kubernetes. And I was like, what? Like mainframes? Like from the 70s? Like mainframes are back and they're getting more popular, especially thanks to AI. I think that's driving some of it too, because of the memory and stuff constraints. But those kinds of things, I think are really exciting. So I actually think that Kubernetes is probably going to get more exciting because we're going to see more things. I was deploying. Basically, it's a new, and we're gonna have it featured on the show. But there's this new tool called Symposium that's basically OpenClaw, but designed for Kubernetes architecture, which is way more exciting. Isn't it more exciting to be able to spin up hundreds or thousands of agents using Kubernetes? So like, I think that stuff is cool. I would like manifest management to be boring-ish. Like I'd like it to feel, because I think Helm charts are just such a pain quite often to deal with.
We've heard that before.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, we've heard it more than twice. Yeah.
That's a theme. That's a theme. Not to pick on the Helm maintainers. They're all wonderful people.
No.
They are wonderful people. And we've spoken to them about this as well. So,
yeah. What's your answer, Daniela?
I think there is one sort of big bucket for me, at least, which is, I think is affecting a lot of people as well, which is primarily upgrades. So the pace of all of these new features coming out, and the 3 releases that we got every year are putting a lot of pressures on teams to keep everything up to date or fall behind. And sometimes, yes, we Kubernetes, at least for me, it is exciting. But I reckon it is exciting in a different way because I'm interested to see what comes out. But sometimes the features that are released are very, very niche, right? So it is exciting for us because we've been using and playing with Kubernetes for a while. But someone just starting today will probably not care about most of the things being released. Whereas, getting a release every 3 months or 4 months, that's put a lot of pressures on teams to upgrade and get things in order. And they already have to develop. They probably already have to deploy because we shift left as much as we can. So I think this is something that we haven't not figured out yet. I don't know what it looks like, but we had someone saying maybe we need a long-term support on Kubernetes. I do think some story around that actually makes sense. I don't know what it looks like. I understand there are pros and cons on both sides of the equation, but something that I think should be more boring is the story on upgrades and new versions.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, well, and boring might even be like, maybe it's that I don't want it to be boring. I want it to be routine.
Correct.
So it's like boring. It involves like a certain level of tedium, and like I definitely don't want Kubernetes to be tedious in any way.
Routine, predictable, unless Wild West. That's what.
I want it to be like that appliance, on your shelf that you don't think about, and it just does its thing perfectly every time. And then
but this appliance done, we need to change every 4 months.
Yeah. So that's a great point. I think LTS would be a great one that would allow a lot of people to be more comfortable. I actually, in my home lab, and this is why I run a home lab again, right? Is like I had K3s running for a long time and it broke one day, and it was because the certificates hadn't rotated. And it was because it expected that you would have upgraded a node or restarted it in like 18 months. And I hadn't done it. And it was like, oh, I didn't even think that. But they just kind of assumed that like people would be doing that. So they've changed that, and it works a little better. The other analogy that I think would be useful here, and this would go to the people like DHH who's saying, hey, this is too complex. He's shipping his own Linux distribution now. I think it's Omarchy or Omarchy, which I haven't tried. It looks really cool, actually. And I'm not hating at all. I'm just talking about the Kubernetes idea. But to me, shipping a Linux distribution is more complex than just using Kubernetes. That feels like a harder thing. Like I've got to compile my own kernel. Like that feels like a bigger deal than running with Kubernetes. But the way that I like to think about Kubernetes is that it is a cloud operating system. And as such, it does things that, because maybe you haven't used a cloud operating system before, feel a little bit foreign and unusual because you haven't been exposed to that before. Another way of thinking about it is that it's a micro cloud, right? Because if you're using AWS is quite complex, right? I mean, it's got it's got a million services. They all have different rules. They're not completely uniform in like how they work between them. But when you use AWS, you have something that's solving logging for you. It's solving secrets management for you. It's solving networking and load balancers, doing all of these things. When you set up a Kubernetes cluster, you get to make choices about all those things. How do you want to handle? Do you want to have a service mesh in there? Do you not need it? Do you want to? These are all choices you have to make. What do you want to use for your secrets provider? How do you want to integrate that? What are you going to do for logging? Are you going to install Prometheus? Are you going to send it external somewhere? And so Kubernetes, it might in some ways feel complex because it's like you're setting up your own Linux distribution and you're making these choices, which is part of the reason that operators love it, right? Is because they're like, oh, sick. It's very easy for me, like Lego bricks, to plug in the components that make this the thing that I want it to be. But for a smaller team or an inexperienced team, they're not excited about making choices on load balancers. Like they don't want to think about it at all. And so then it can feel complex in that way.
I think that's a great point, and they're going to feel that they're getting bogged down with making those decisions and the risk that's going to be going into them, and it's going to be taking them away from things that are probably more important for their business because they're just not at that point yet, and they don't necessarily need that. So, like you were saying, there are other options out there, whether it's Docker Compose, whether it's ECS, different things that might work depending on their use case, and that's why there's sometimes this love-hate relationship with Kubernetes of thinking like, oh, we thought that this was going to change everything. Actually, it just took a ton of time and it created a lot of headaches because of having to make those decisions. So once again, I think, is it the right technological fit and also the right cultural fit, depending on the kind of appetite for new things and making decisions that people might have or not.
Yeah. And there's a startup question here of like, how do you demonstrate value? So like if you're in the mode of like, oh, we're going to be building our application, we want to see if we have product market fit, then like to your point, Daniela, I don't really care if you throw that like a cloud code VM on it, because all you're trying to prove is this idea works, or we know how to sell this idea, or we know how to show the value of it, or when people use it, they resonate to the experience. And after that, I can optimize for performance and resiliency and all these other things. But the thing that kills most companies isn't that they don't have enough resilience. Look at GitHub. It's got like 1 9 of uptime now. It's like 2 9s of uptime. I think it's maybe 3, but it's not 5 9s. And we've been talking about 5 9s as the gold standard forever. GitHub is far short of that. And it hasn't stopped them from being super successful. So it's not usually that you die because of resiliency issues. It's usually that you die because the thing you built just doesn't connect with people. And so to that extent, I do think like putting Kubernetes before that, it's not really worth it.
The other question I've got, so Dan, you mentioned, you get this question a lot. You decided to run this podcast on the question, but on the other side, I'm like, okay, you're not using Kubernetes. What are your options? Right? The people complaining, not complaining, but sort of venting their ideas, their opinions on Kubernetes. What else are they considering for deploying infrastructure? Because I'm all in reducing complexity when it comes to developing and deploying, but I still have to see something which has got lower complexity. If I just group the things I need from Kubernetes to deploy, I still need to find some which is lower complexity than Kubernetes. I understand it's a difficult statement to make, as in Kubernetes is very complex. But the other options for me, they feel more complex. Do you know? Have you had any experience on?
No, I agree. Yeah, I agree 100%.
Say?
Like if you're. I mean, I'm not ever having to convince my clients to use Kubernetes. They've already made that choice, and I'm helping them, execute on their vision of what they imagine they can do with Kubernetes. So I don't ever get into a situation where I'm like, oh, you should. I actually that's not true. I had one who was a friend who had a situation where I was like, why aren't you using Kubernetes for that? And they're like, oh, that sounds like overkill. And we talked through it, and it was just they didn't have the appetite for it. They just weren't focused on it. They didn't feel like they had a problem, so that's fine. But like to what Kubernetes does, and you mentioned, I think the number when people are talk about the value of Kubernetes, everybody's always like, oh, resiliency, scalability, blah blah blah. That's actually all gravy as far as I'm considered with Kubernetes. We did a survey with Google, or Google did the survey, and we helped talk about it afterwards with them. But they did this survey years ago, way back in like 2018. Why are you adopting Kubernetes? And the number one answer was developer productivity.
Okay.
Why did people think they were getting developer productivity out of it? It was because Kubernetes was declarative. And it allowed them to represent their entire stack, their entire infrastructure in a declarative format, which meant it was really easy to replicate. It was really easy to debug. And I could run containers locally and expect them to run on Kubernetes just as well. And as a result, I could enable a dozen or 100. The scalability was actually more on the developer side first than it was on the services side. I can now have 1,000 people committing changes, and pushing them forward, and have these things be more predictable because I'm using Kubernetes. Whereas if I had 1,000 people emailing PHP patches like I used to do to their sysadmin, it's hard to be as productive that way.
Those were the days.
those were the days of suck. Hey, your patch didn't work. Why not? Oh, my PHP init was different than yours. Shoot.
It was a proper merge queue.
Yeah.
Email everything to the sysadmin, and then they will figure out the order for the merge queue.
Yeah, then it becomes their problem, right? Yeah, but I don't think that. I think if we understand what we're trying to get out of Kubernetes and the value of it, the choices become really simple. We see a lot of. One of the cool edge use cases that we've seen a lot more of is edge Kubernetes. And it's because they're like, hey, I can stick a 3-node stack in a remote, whatever desert outpost. And if one of the nodes dies, nobody cares. And if 2 nodes die, we'll put it on our to-do list. And if 3 nodes die, then somebody's got to drive out there. But other than that, we're not going to worry about it. And that's pretty resilient. Hey, that feels like that's a total use case solve thing. But if you are just trying to figure out if the market resonates to your idea, you don't have to start there.
And then there is something else, I think, at least, the clients I'm speaking to, there is this increase in Gen AI sort of tooling that create apps. And as a consequence, all the platform engineering teams I speak to, they say, we used to have 10 apps to deploy. Now we've got an order of magnitude more. Right? Which makes sense, right? The software is getting cheaper, and then we need to deploy these applications. Of course, you need to find a way to deploy them. But here's the interesting thing is how do you actually do that, right? The number of deployments now is increasing by a factor.
Yeah. Is it easier for you to SSH onto a VM
Correct.
and configure a service to restart a container and keep it running for every new service? Or is it easier for you just to describe what it should look like and commit that YAML to Git and then just let it show up?
And then there is also, these companies are also like, not small companies. So it's also about, policies and, standards. How do you make all of these pipeline, sort of stamped, approved? So I think, we give this for granted, but Kubernetes gives us extension points and things that we can inspect and sort of check, right? You know very well with GitOps done, but I think all of these, together, it scales quite nicely with not just scaling on the server side of things, but it's also scaling when it comes to deployment and checking things and the policies, which I think are very important. So I think, yes, this is why I'm like, okay, you can avoid Kubernetes. Let's say you go with something like, WASM or something else, but how do you actually solve all of these problems, right? And what is your story from developing something and going into production?
Oh my gosh. I remember at Atlassian that we built a flavor of all of our services that was called Data Center. And it allowed you to use essentially a distributed state model to scale out Jira. And that was a lot of work to figure out. And we basically replaced that with Kubernetes as soon as it was possible, right? I mean, as soon as Kubernetes became the way that people were doing stuff, it was like, okay, cool. We're just going to provide a Kubernetes distribution for this stuff. And that's going to be the way that if you want to scale, you just do that. There's not really a reason for us to reinvent the wheel here to do it differently. So that made it simpler. But okay, here's a little game, okay, that I wanted to play with you guys. Okay. So here's the game. I'm gonna describe this is Kubernetes overkill game show. I'm gonna tell you a scenario and you tell me if Kubernetes is the right fit or overkill. All right. Hey, you guys ready? And we'll go.
Do I have a choice?
Well, you can say no, I suppose.
No, I'm gonna play.
Okay, all right.
Bring it on.
So here's scenario number 1. Your son has a homework assignment where he needs to prove that he knows how Boolean logic works. Should he use Kubernetes?
That sounds carefully. Only daughters.
What do you think?
I'm going with yes, it's overkill.
Okay, but Bart's going to say overkill. All right. So there's a floor to this. Daniela, do you have an answer?
Well, I do Kubernetes for a living. Of course, they have to use Kubernetes, right?
So you're going to say still yes.
No, I'm saying hard no, and they have to call my dad because he studied philosophy in the 70s, and they had to learn Boolean logic. So I'm going to make them call it.
So he should just do it in a Word document, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Or a text document.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Scenario 2. You have a mission critical flight computer in a brand new F-35 jet plane. Should that be running on a Kubernetes cluster? Is it overkill?
Not only should it be, but they should also be consulting Dan because Dan did trainings with the U.S. Air Force. I think I can say that. I think I can say that publicly. So
I don't. To be honest, I would, for something as critical as that, running inside the plane. I don't know. Everything supporting the plane, probably yes.
Everything supporting the plane, probably yes.
Yes, I would use Kubernetes. I think I need telemetry. I need data. I need to prepare things. All of that, definitely Kubernetes. Because just the sheer amount of services that I need, and all the different plumbings that Kubernetes will give me. Yeah, no, I think probably very likely. Whatever I deploy in the plane, I don't know, because it would be like real time, and I would need to be real. It would need to be real precise. So I would need to think about that. Not sure about Kubernetes there.
I remember doing an event in the Netherlands, and the Dutch military was running Kubernetes at the edge in armored vehicles. Not the same as a plane, but hearing about those examples.
So I will tell you that it has been confirmed that the U.S. Air Force has deployed not only Kubernetes, but Kubernetes with Istio on F-16s and U-2 spy planes.
Okay.
Whether or not it's on the F-35 is up to speculation, but they actually are doing it. So that one at least is confirmed. Okay. Scenario 3. We have a smart refrigerator that shows you your shopping list on the door. Should that be running Kubernetes?
I would say yes. I would say yes. A few years back, I helped a company deploy Kubernetes in a solar farm, and they had each solar panel as a node, and then they could control like a massive number of solar panels that way with all the sensors.
So wait. Each solar panel had a computer, a low power computer, and it was a Kubernetes node?
They already have. So all solar panels need to basically check on things such as the angle for the sun. They need to check for temperature and stuff. So they're like small motors that will basically adjust the positions and stuff. So all of that needs to be controlled But if you think about it, you've got like a massive number of solar panels, and you need to control all of them. So you need like a way to distribute your software. You need a way to, control it. And then the worst of that is that, this is very, a solar farm might be in the middle of a desert. So you might lose one solar panel from time to time. And suddenly, the idea of using Kubernetes sounds quite attractive because, you can lose a node, it's going to come back up, it's going to be re-registered. You can deploy all of it, to all of the nodes. Yes, it's going to take ages. Maybe you're on 5G, but actually it is, if you think about it, it's not, it sounds like a crazy idea, but suddenly you solve a lot of problems that you had to sort out anyway, because you need a way to dispatch this software, you need a way to deploy it, to control it.
Wow, so that's a really cool use case.
I think, yes, you can on the fridge in the same way as the solar panel.
Okay, scenario 5.
Kafka. What about a 4?
No, we did 4. 4 was
okay.
Next scenario, Kafka.
Okay.
One word.
One word.
Kafka. End of question.
Probably not. Probably not.
It is.
I think you probably can. You probably can, but I think it will probably be not trivial to get right. I think what immediately comes to mind is Honeycomb, which run Kafka in front of their ingestion pipeline. I don't think they use Kubernetes for that. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think they do. And if they don't do it, I don't want to do it either.
So I'll tell you the answer for the community. According to Portworx, anyway, Kafka is actually one of the most popular stateful applications on Kubernetes.
Yeah. Well,
no, go ahead, Bart.
Yeah, no, in the data on Kubernetes community, we had plenty of people that were running Kafka on Kubernetes.
Okay.
And then also speaking to people that were running Red Panda, as Kafka alternative on Kubernetes as well. So yeah, no, I believe the Portworx study on that. That makes sense.
Yeah, cool. All right. Last scenario. Your home lab. Should you be running your home lab on Kubernetes?
Yeah, I think
if it's good enough for Dan Garfield, it's good enough for me.
It's a good answer.
That's a right answer.
I'm sold.
Yes.
Yeah, Daniela, do you agree?
Yeah. I for the same reason that I do the same. I like to have something local that I can play with. It helps me understand things, to break things. Since I have to teach this stuff to my students, I think it's a lot easier for me to actually experience it firsthand. So it's not really a choice for me. I have to play with. I have to play with it. But I think overall, I see a lot of people using Kubernetes on their home labs. Again, for the same reason as us, learning. That's one reason. But for me, again, it's back to all of these YAML. Yes, it is a lot of things to take in. But once you understand what they are, it's always the same. You can read it, raise, SSH into a place and changing things. I always forget what I've done. I need to go and back. If I want to do something which is production grade, I need something like Chef or Puppet, and just those days are gone for me.
No, that's over. Yeah, done with that.
Not anymore.
Well, I've actually within the home lab scenario, and by the way, thanks for playing. Should you use Kubernetes? And by the way, you each tied for first place, and you get to bring the dining set home. So congratulations on that.
Thank
you. No, in my home lab, I've actually been really excited to discover how well agentic workloads.
Okay.
It's so cool to be able to spin up a pod, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's 2026. If you're not buying a Mac Mini, that's $10,000. You're gonna be left behind. You're in the garbage now. Everybody's gonna forget about you, and your kids won't respect you anymore if you don't get that Mac Mini. No, you're never gonna retire at 35 if you don't have a Mac Mini. Like, it's just crazy." But I discovered, like, I already have a Kubernetes cluster, and I can already just run agentic workloads on it, and I can take advantage of multiple nodes. It's sick.
Dan, do you have GPUs in your home lab?
Okay, I don't have GPUs in my Kubernetes cluster.
Okay.
I have a dedicated AI box that
What is it?
It's got two 3090s in it.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's iWinger, it's live, buddy. Yeah, make your comment. Sorry, little comment. It's like, is this even live? Yeah, bro. This is live.
This is live.
But yeah, so I run a dedicated AI box with two 3090s in it. So it's got 48 gigs of VRAM, and I've got like, I don't know, 48 gigs of RAM on top of that. And I built it 3 years ago, thinking that I was going to do a ton of local AI, and the local models were just never that great.
Okay.
And then 2 weeks ago, Alibaba dropped Quinn 3.5, 38 billion parameters, and it runs at like 80, 100 tokens a second on my 3090s. And it's really good. I mean, it's probably like GPT 4.0 level, maybe a little bit better. And so it just hums. And so I can distribute my workloads, and they can all just ping the API service and take advantage of it that way. And they can do whatever processing or run tests locally, and then they can queue up and stuff like that. And it's pretty sick. I haven't tried it to the level where I have like 50 agents running at a time yet, but I'm excited to try to do that. Like, I think that'll be really fun. I want to see what happens. But I like that scenario. I think running the GPUs in Node, it's a little bit more limiting, right? Because you have to bring so much memory to the equation. So it's like, do you really need to run multiple models, or you just need to run like one model really fast? Is that enough? That's a question.
Yeah, I think running GPUs. Yeah, the reason I ask is because running GPUs in Kubernetes is something I would say, I can say relatively new. Is not really true, but in the sense that, you know, it's become more common in the recent past. And so all the practices, you know, all the toolings that we have, it is a little bit rough around the edges. So that's why I was interested to see your experimentation and learnings on this side of things.
Well, I did it back like, I don't know, 5 years ago. I had deployed Plex and I had mounted all the local GPUs to do hardware transcoding and stuff. And so I could do distributed hardware transcoding. And it definitely was, like, at the time, way more limited. Like, you could only have one pod taking advantage of the device at a time. I think that's changed, and now it's shared and you can split it up. Actually, let's take iWinger's question. And we're coming up pretty much at time. I'm sorry, guys. I kept you. We've been having a good time. But let's take a question, and then we'll wrap up. So iWinger says, "Thanks. I recently deployed Argo CD to my self-hosted Kubernetes in PVE. I assume he means player versus creeps. I don't know what he means by PVE. Then I integrated the instance to Octopus. I haven't deployed yet, but I see some cool deployment samples in Octopus. Do you know what PVE is? I actually don't know what PVE is.
No.
Oh, Proxmox. Oh, the Proxmox. Okay. Sorry for your storage. All right, yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that's awesome, iWinger. Thanks for sharing that. So, yeah, working with Octopus is great, and you can if you're using Argo CD, you can deploy the Argo CD gateway on Octopus, as well as the Kubernetes agent. And I actually would recommend you do both. The Kubernetes agent allows you to do things like runbooks, so you can like add a sync window temporarily as a runbook. If you wanted to like debug Argo CD, you could do other things, as well as the Argo CD gateway. And if you just add annotations to your Argo CD applications, it automatically adds them to the corresponding project in Octopus, which is really cool. So yeah, try that out, iWinger, and we'd love to see your use case in the future. So Bart, Daniela, I want to give you guys the final word. Kubernetes, yay or nay? Is it overhyped, or is it underhyped by the community? What do you think?
I might be biased.
As the host of Kube FM, do you think it's overhyped?
There might be some bias. Just saying that.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Well, thanks again for coming on the show, guys. And this is a fun
Thank you,
conversation. Do you have anything coming up you want to hype out and promote, let people know about?
Kubernetes. That's for sure. No, we'll be at KubeCon. Looking forward to talk to people there about all their least favorite features on Kubernetes. We'll be doing lots of interviews. Last KubeCon we did about 75 interviews. This time we want to do over 100. So look forward to hearing from folks on the ground. And yeah, looking forward to that.
Are you going to be there, Dan?
I'll be there. Yeah. So I'll see you guys in Amsterdam.
That's great.
I just had an idea. I want to pitch you. What if we did a Cube FM episode and we did it as a Hot Ones episode? So we all got wings and we ate progressively spicy wings and then just talked about our impression from KubeCon show as we went through and ate hotter and hotter wings. What do you guys think about that?
I'm not against it. Because I want to see Daniela suffer.
I have a feeling that Daniela and this group, that you might be the one that suffers the most from the spice if we did it. Am I wrong?
I think so too.
We'll see. We'll consider your proposal.
Bart, you look like a guy that can handle some spice. I feel like you can hang.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's talk after this. Well, my people will talk to your people.
That's
Maybe we can
good.
make a KubeCon, post KubeCon Hot Ones could be a lot of fun to talk about.
Sounds good.
That's good. Thanks so much.
All right,
for
thanks,
having
guys.
me. Cheers.
Well,
Okay.
as always, thanks again for another episode of Argo Unpacked. Come back in 2 weeks, and we're going to be talking about something very exciting. It just slipped my mind. It was so exciting that it slipped my mind. It was well, come back in 2 weeks anyway. It's on our X. We'll do it then. So thanks again, everybody, and as always, stay synced.